We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles Mackenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the podcast. And as much as last week did feel good to have a little distraction with the start of our FA Cup campaign, it does feel exciting again to get back to the bread and butter of the Premier League. And to get us back into the swing of things, we take on Crystal Palace at the Stadium of Light. And it's been almost 9.5 years since we last saw this fixture on Wearside. But although both clubs are in a good place generally, they will be looking to take advantage of one another because Palace are without a win in 6 league games and we can boast 1 win in the last 6. But that was against the visitors, which provides more than just 3 points to be fair. But to tell us how much chance we have of getting back to winning ways, I have 3 gentlemen with me with all of the answers. They may not be the correct answers, but they will have answers all the same. And first up, we have missed out yesterday, so is eager as always to have his say ahead of the game. And we're just saying, just before we record that, it doesn't happen very often now that we're on the same pod. So I'm very pleased to say Gav is with us. Hello, Gav.
Hello, mate. Yes, it's been a while, hasn't it? I think I'd have to look back. Maybe the Christmas quiz. That's ridiculous, really, isn't it?
Bloody hell.
People think we're falling out, Chris.
It is absolutely ridiculous, but just it's to try and to split it all up, and it just feels longer than that. To be fair, it feels like the beginning of the season. But anyway, just after the FA Cup, Gav, good to get back.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really looking forward to the game today. Just every single home game at the minute is an absolute pleasure to go to. They're an occasion. I'm like most Sunderland fans, just eager to get in the pub, eager to get in amongst the crack and, back in the Stadium of Light. And that's because the lads have turned up every time at the Stadium of Light this season. They've shown they can do it. Obviously, the last home game was 2 weeks ago? Just over 2 weeks ago. So feels like ages, really. I mean, I've whinged about this before, but that's the one thing I miss about the Championship is not playing like loads of home games or loads of games really close together. They feel really spread out. And I was one of the unfortunate souls who missed out on a ticket for Everton because I was daft enough to wait for me mates for less points. Not that I'm bitter about it, by the way. Not that I'm bitter about it. I could have quite easily got a ticket, but, being a good mate and all that, I waited. So, yes, eager to get back in the ground, eager to see the lads play, eager to see possibly Ronaldo and Noah Siddiqui play again because I've missed them. And, looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Looking forward to getting into it. And like I said, we don't just have Gav with us. We also have Jonny Hawley. Hello, Jonny.
Hello, Chris. Yes, it's nice to be here talking about Premier League action, proper football, and a nice little return from as you said, the welcome break from the FA Cup last week, but thankfully a short one.
Yeah, well, I don't quite believe we asked you again to come back on a preview after last week's team predictions, mate.
Yeah, I'm hoping this time we have slightly more of a clue of what's going on, but yeah, I think you might have been right in the intro. We've got answers. God knows if they're the right ones, but we've got answers.
Well, to be fair, it was a bit of a stab in the dark because not sure too many people were expecting the lack of rotation for last week's game against Everton.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be an interesting one this weekend again, isn't it? Like, obviously we'll get into it, but after the team that we put out last week, what does that mean for this weekend? With certain players are back, certain players are injured, and there's still some question marks that'll be lingering. But hopefully, either we can happen upon the right answer, or we can just talk Regis into doing whatever we say, because obviously they all listen to it, as we've established many times. So yeah, we could be the ones picking the team.
Yeah, that's it. We definitely influenced team selection by saying definitely Anthony Patterson will be in goal and getting it completely wrong, of course. But
can I just stick my hand up on that one, Chris? I missed that episode. My record of picking teams this season has been very, very good. You needed me. I would have completely disagreed with you. So I'm not getting chucked into that one. By the way, what was the game before that? I called the team down to the nub. I'm sure I did. Me and Andrew were on. What game was
Brentford.
it? Yeah. I mean, we did get hammered, like, so if I'd been manager, we would have also got hammered. But I did combine your selection.
Yeah, if we can combine your team selection with the result we got after our preview, then we're absolutely laughing, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that, I'm definitely going to write this one down, and I'm going to make sure I bring it up next week on how right you were, Gav, or how you were, because you did mention Andrew, and we also have Andrew with us. So hello, Andrew.
Hello, Chris, mate. Hello, lads. Nice to see you all.
Yes,
Hello.
and you had the sub teacher the other day, Andrew. How was that?
He did all right. Give him his dues. He did all right. I'd love to be able to rip him to shreds, but considering he had to put up with me, he got me and Bomber through it quite well, I thought. So yeah. So like I say, I'd like to be able to take him down a peg or two, because he's just sat there smug as anything. But he did himself proud.
Yeah. And, I'm just absolutely devastated he's not wearing that cardigan again, because seeing that, I heard all about it on the pod, and, it's not on show.
Well, for a peek behind the curtain, let's just say it's been worn a few too many times to put it on again without sticking it through the wash, I reckon.
It's one of those cardigans. Anyway, okay, let's move on. Because in typical Howie the Podcast fashion, we recorded a news roundup, and then all the news started coming out of the club. So the first, get straight into it, and I'll start with you, Gav, because I know nothing about him, and I'm going to pass it across to you, because Fabrizio Romano has been on again. He's done a Here We Go exclusive. Sunderland signed a deal for Ivorian winger Jocelyn Carby. I'm going to pronounce that, or B, however you want to pronounce that. Right winger, deal done apparently for $3.5 million. He's currently playing in the Israeli Premier League, 20 years old. He fits the profile, doesn't he?
Yes, he fits the profile of nobody's ever heard of him, and we didn't see it really coming. $3.5 million fee, 5-year deal, player we've never heard of. He's going to be mint, isn't he? No, I've missed these. I've missed these Here We Goes from Fabrizio Romano. We didn't get a Here We Go. Actually, we got an exclusive. The Here We Go normally comes kind of before the exclusive. He led with exclusive, not Here We Go. But that kind of means it's done if he's reporting it, doesn't it? I think. Look, he was linked really heavily with Celtic. I think that's where his name first appeared, and there was a bit of uproar amongst the Celtic fans about them signing a player from an Israeli team. And then came some sort of briefing out through the media that he actually had a medical issue, so that's why they vetoed on the deal. So I'll be interested to see what's actually said if he does, and when he does sign, whether he's got this mysterious injury that Celtic claimed he had. But look, it's another player who I've never heard of, seen the highlights videos, looks exciting, but you do have to temper that by saying he's playing in the Israeli Premier League and not the English Premier League at the minute. But we've let players go in this window who are nowhere near. We've let, Joe Anderson's gone out the door, Jay Matete, Timothy Pembele, I'm sure Abdullah Bal not be far behind him. Hopefully Jan Poveda won't be too far out the door. So we are making room in the wage budget in the squad to bring in, there could be another couple like this, just lads who are probably not going to feature very heavily. But like a lot of teams in the Premier League, you go out, you tap into these markets where other clubs might not necessarily be looking. You find these players and then you bring them on board and you see what they've got, because you're paying for potential ultimately. But no, I tell you what, I love it. I love when we just get linked to these random names. It's like real life Championship Manager, isn't it? It's yeah. Again, can't profess to be an expert. I might try and find someone who knows who he is and do a pod with him. I think that could be interesting, but I can't imagine there are too many English-speaking Israeli Premier League experts out there. But we'll see what we can do. But yes, looking forward to seeing a little bit more of this guy if it does come off.
Yeah, well, you're our resident linguist, Gav, so how are we pronouncing this one?
Ooh, well, Jocelyn's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's Joss. If you were called Jocelyn, you'd want to be Joss, wouldn't you? But we'll go with Tarby.
Carby.
Or is that
I like it.
two close to Talby. I mean, his song's already is. We could have Tarby and Talby on the wings, which will be great for me dad, because he cannot say nout, so he's worse than me. We'll go with Tarby, I think.
Yeah, well, that'll do me. But Jonny, because it was interesting in the press conference when they said, look, Traore is out for, what was it, I think it was actually 6-7 weeks, because I think I was thinking of the old, the kids with the memes and all that sort of stuff, but I might be wrong on that. But I've been told by the kids I'm not allowed to do that anymore, because
I'm going to tell you you're not allowed to do that anymore as well.
I keep pissing them off by trying to be hip. But yeah, what was I saying? Yes, he said that the two weren't connected in terms of the injury and the transfer window, but we seem to have gone out and bought a right winger.
Well, I mean, it's one of those, isn't it? Like Gav said, there was talk of him maybe having a medical issue. Potentially, we may have signed him injured, because I expect that this is not the kind of transfer where we're expecting him to drop in and hit the ground running. I don't think it's linked to Traore's injury in the sense that, okay, Traore is out, so we need a body in sooner so that they can, be involved this weekend or next weekend. I could be wrong, but I expect that this lad's going to be, very slowly phased into things. I wouldn't be surprised if he, maybe if we don't even see him really before the end of the season, might get the odd few minutes here and there. And look, I know that obviously we do have spaces in the squad in the wide areas. It's definitely something that I think we still need to address, even if this lad signs. So there's scope for him to get involved if he comes in and he's fit and he impresses in training. But I'd be inclined to believe Lebris when he kind of said, we're not gonna overreact to one injury in Traore's case and rush anything, because again, he made mention several times, didn't he, of January transfer. Well, not January transfers, but transfers are difficult. Everything's constantly shifting and always moving. So I don't even think we could necessarily get a deal done that quickly just out of panic from Traore. So no, I think this lad's going to be one for the future. He's 20 years old, I think. So yeah, he's got plenty of room to develop and grow, and couldn't really be coming to a better place to do it, could he? So hopefully he manages to have the same sort of success that some of the other lads have had.
Yeah. And I mean, just reading about it, Andrew, I like these ones, where it's kind of 3.5 million. So you're almost thinking, well, actually, is it a kind of, you can't really lose by taking a punt on someone for that? You're not really, taking a chance on a 15 million player, 20 million player, something like that. 3.5 million. And by the description of him, a left-footed right winger. So it almost sounds like a Mundle, but on the other side.
Yeah, to be or not to be, that is the question.
There it is. There's the line.
Yeah, he does sound like the type of wide player we want, and you can't ever suggest that Sunderland aren't throwing the net out wide, because it's not even like he's from a particularly, I don't even think he's playing for a particularly high-profile club in the league at the moment. Is he on loan somewhere, have I read? I might be confusing that with somebody else we're linked with.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
It does. It sounds like a relatively low-risk buy. But we've got the environment where players like that can come and just take their time and find their feet, get to know the area, because it's a big upheaval for him if he comes along. But why not? Why not? Nobody's going to be demanding that he's in the team in the next 7 days and be expecting him to produce, 10 goals between now and the end of the season. He can just come along, get a feel for the place, and then give himself the best opportunity in the odd minutes that he might get for the first team, just to show what he can do and then build on things from there. So I'm happy to see it. Happy to see it.
Yeah, well, he doesn't even have a Wikipedia page at the minute, so the race is on for Sunderland fans to go out and start writing that and put absolute rubbish on it.
I'm just wondering, do you reckon Christian Speakman had sausage fingers and was trying to type Talby and just press the space key like I often do, and then this player just appeared and he went, oh. Yeah, the other thing I would say is that I mentioned it before about Celtic fans not particularly liking the idea of this one. If you Google his name, there's a picture of a big old banner outside of Celtic Park saying, "Don't spend our money in apartheid Israel." relating to this transfer. So there was a big backlash to this potentially happening up there in Glasgow. And there were other stories about him having this injury and him being sent to see a specialist in London about it to determine the extent of it before Celtic decided to move on him. There's something, I don't know about you, there's just something not right about that with me. I might be wrong, but I just feel like it's too much of a coincidence that it looked like Celtic were going to sign this player. There's been a bit of fan backlash, and all of a sudden there's this problem apparently that they've found. I'm interested to see what actually comes out from all of that.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one, especially since your suggestion it's down the lines of Milton Nunes, where we're signing the wrong player or something like that. Because
can you imagine if it was though? Our generation's Milton Nunes.
What would you want? To be fair, it's been about a quarter of a century or something. So to be fair, but yeah, just moving on. We've had a couple of bits of other news coming out of the club. So just very quickly, Gav, you've already touched on it. Joe Anderson joined Barrow in League Two on a permanent basis. And Tuchorov has gone to Exeter City in League One. Potentially, I was thinking about that. It might be Malcolm Crosby keeping an eye on the young lads at Sunderland from his position at Chief Scout at Exeter. But both of those make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm amazed Joe Anderson lasted 3 years, to be honest. Not that he did anything wrong. I just think we kept him around for a long time not playing, and he spent... It must be coming up to a year now where he hasn't even really been playing under 21s games. He's had the odd one here and there. I know he had another loan, didn't he? I can't remember where he went now. Was it? Can anybody remember where he went? We did send him somewhere on loan, didn't we?
Was it Shrewsbury?
Yes, that's
right.
Did
he have a season at Shrewsbury, maybe?
Yeah, but that was a couple of years ago now. And he's 24-year-old, coming up 25. Like, I'm amazed he's still been here to this point. But for him, he gets a move to a team playing in the league, which is good. I know it's still a canny hike from Barrow down to Liverpool, but he's on that side of the country where he's kind of lived. He's from Stalybridge, I think, which is Greater Manchester. So he's a little bit closer to home than he was perhaps here. And yeah, I think, other than that, he's done himself no harm. He got into the team, didn't he, towards the end of last season in that little spell where we weren't really taking the games particularly seriously. And actually, he did okay. I thought he kind of held himself well. So yeah, good luck to the lad. It's a decent move for him in terms of Timur. And I noticed you dodged his first name there, Chris. So we'll not let that one slide. But Timur Tutierov has gone to Exeter now. With him, I can't profess to be an expert on the under 21s, and maybe this is one for Andrew to come in on. But whenever I've watched him, he stands out a mile at that level. He's a really talented lad. There was a great video that the club put out, which if people haven't seen it, they should try and dig it out. I think it's on YouTube, which was a video they did with Tutierov and the lady who took him in as a, I don't know what the actual term is, but basically he lived with a family in Sunderland when he first came here. And it's a really good video about his relationship with her that people should try and dig out. But he's really developed quite quickly in the last year or so. He scores a lot of goals. He's busy. He's the type. I actually tweeted this from our account earlier on Friday when I said, had we still been in League One and this is an opportunity which the likes of Dan Neil and Patterson got in particular, had we still been in League One, he'd have been part of the first team. So to see him go to Exeter it's a decent move, really, when you look at I'm pretty sure aren't they doing really well as well, Exeter in
mid-table in League One. Yeah,
not a bad move for him. He'll go in there, relatively small club, and yeah, good luck to the lad. Maybe you talk about Malcolm Crosby, maybe Nick Barnes put a word in because isn't that his club? Yeah.
You never know. But yeah, to be honest, Gav, I thought I'd go with the harder one out of I thought his first name's the easier one out of the two.
Harder than Joe.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just quickly, Johnny, on Tutierov. But he was on the bench for Brentford game, Spurs, Man City, Leeds. So it's clear the club rate him.
Well, that's what I was thinking actually when Gav was talking about him. Because I don't watch the the under 21s very much at all. So I can't say that I've seen him at that level. But everything you hear about him is very positive. Everything, in terms of I think he gets a good amount of goals and stuff as well. Like he's involved in a lot of good things. So that coupled with the fact that he is appearing on the bench, like you say, it points to the fact that the club really rate him. And on the flip side, you can also say that there's needed to be extra bodies on the bench in the past few weeks because of the absences that we've had in the first team squad. But still, when you are then filling that bench with your younger players, you're essentially going to put them on there in order of how highly you rate them, aren't you? Whichever ones you think are the closest to being ready and going to benefit the most from it are the ones that you're going to put in there. So yeah, it's all positive signs at the minute for the lad. So hopefully he manages to find his feet a bit at Exeter and make a bit of a start at making his way in the men's game. And then, if we can get back a physically better and more experienced and more developmentally ready version of him, then I think that just suits everybody.
Yeah. Well, look, that's everything up to date in terms of the news roundup. That didn't happen in the news roundup this week because it all came out after. Go on, Gav.
I mean, just to add something to it, since we've just kind of talked about it, then moved on slightly, but the Tarby, we're with Tarby still, deal, Keith Downey actually tweeted a little bit more detail on it. I don't know if you want us to quickly touch on it.
Yeah, go on, Gav.
He said, we've agreed a deal to sign them from Israeli side Maccabi Netanya. The 20-year-old Ivorian has already completed his medical, so if he was injured, we've signed him with an injury in the northeast, and we'll sign today, as we record this, which is Friday, peek behind the curtain time again, for a fee in the region of 3 million. He's agreed a 4.5-year deal with the club with the option of an additional year. Did Fabrizio Romano say 5 years? Or did I?
He said 5.
So slight variation there, and I'm guessing what that means is, the additional year was the bit that maybe Romano missed. Sunderland have pipped Celtic to the signature. The Scottish club thought they had a deal in place, so we've stuck our elbows out and we've nudged them out the way, and is seen as a very much as a player for the future. So a bit more detail there, but yeah, looks like this one could even be announced by the time this pod drops. So let's see.
It's interesting to me, lads, that he's being described as one for the future. Because there you've got Tutierov, who plays a similar role, moving on into the Football League to get games on loan. So it shows that, again, the club are doing all of this succession planning that we talk about quite a lot. I think there's going to be a few spots in the under-21s cropping up, perhaps for some of our under-18s, because you've got Middlemass away, you've got Joe Anderson away. They both played regularly at under-21s, and so did Tutierov. So maybe we're now looking to fill those gaps instead of all being under 18s. Maybe we're supplementing that with one or two from abroad. Tutierov, for me, I think he's got all the pace and all the skill in the world. What we need Exeter to do is to help him with his decision making and his final ball. If he can nail that down, we really do have a prospect, because he's got a lot of good things going for him, but just that final decision sometimes isn't quite right. And yeah, if he comes back in pre-season with that, I mean, he's already played for the first team in pre-season, and I think was one of the better players when we got gubbed at the Stadium of Light. So yeah, couple of good months for the lad. He could well be fancying himself for a few more positions on the bench going forward.
Yeah, and just to round off on that, really, I think this is maybe the kind of transfer we should start getting used to, because I think when you're in the Premier League, you can afford to go out there and just take hopeful punts on players like this, who he might even go back out on loan this month. You know what I mean? He might not even come to Sunderland. He might just be loaned out to a better league, a higher placed league, to a team we've got a good relationship with, that can expose him to a better level of football for 6 months, and then he comes back in pre-season. Like that happens regularly in the Premier League, where like Brighton and teams like that, Chelsea a little bit maybe more higher placed in this regard and spend a bit of money, but sometimes they buy players and you never see them. They just buy players to loan them out, get them a reputation in a foreign league and sell them on for more money. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with this kid, but I think there is an aspect of, when you talk about the model in player turnover, there is an aspect where you just go out there and you buy players that you've got really no intention of using. So I'm not saying this because the case for this kid, but I think over the next sort of 18 to 24 months, we'll probably see a lot more buys like this.
Yeah, that's it. It'll be interesting to see when players leave, whether they're going to be replaced with deals like this one. So it'll be one to watch the rest of this transfer window. But let's get on to the game in hand against Crystal Palace, because we have to go back to 2003 to find a league win over Palace at the Stadium of Light. We haven't won in the 5 games we've had against them since then in the league. And last time we played them on home soil was under David Moyes, when Defoe scored 2 to put us 2 up with around 30 minutes to go in September 2016. And we ended up losing 3-2. And to make things worse, Alan Pardew was the Palace manager. Yeah, and to rub salt in the wounds, Connor Wickham came on as sub for Crystal Palace as well that day. But I was going to ask you, Andrew, straight off the bat, memories of playing Palace at home?
I had genuinely forgotten that one, and that it was a shocker. It was absolute, well, dog dirt is the polite way to dog dirt, because it was appalling. And I think, didn't we have one against them a couple of years previously where that, I want to say he's called Balassi, he'd not scored in a billion years, and then he gets a hat-trick against us, which was
was depressing that day. It was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was that the one when the game was basically over by half time?
Yeah, and it was kind of on Sky. It was on the Gillette Soccer Saturday and the BBC about basically how empty the stadium was at the end of the game.
Yes, yeah.
Everyone was talking about it.
Aye, that sounds about right. And knowing me, I will have stayed to the end, but that is not a badge of honour, because I think the people who left early were the ones in the right on that occasion. I think my favourite memory of Crystal Palace is a bit of an odd one, but we played them in the FA Cup one year, and that wasn't a big crowd, but they'd been promoted the season before, having kind of done us in the playoffs. We kind of got shafted a bit by them, and then we played them in the Cup the following season, and I think Andy Welsh might have played. It was that type of era, but we got a 2-1 win. And
Andy Welsh scored.
Did Welsh score? Yeah, we got a 2-1 win, and it kind of counted as a cup upset. So I remember that one quite fondly. But yeah, there's not a lot to go on recently.
Yeah.
That game, what we were talking about there, where Balassi got the hat-trick, can anybody remember the significance of that game or not?
It was it somebody's last game in charge?
No, it was it was the next game. It was literally 6 days after we beat the Mags 1-0 when Defoe scored the volley. So confidence was really high. We just beat Newcastle. We just lifted ourselves up the table, and then we got absolutely brought back down to earth in the most Sunderland fashion ever. We were toast by 62 minutes. We were 4-0 down. It wasn't half time. I've just looked. We conceded 4 goals within the first 17 minutes of the second half.
Bloody hell.
So we were 0-0 at half time, and then we were 4-0 down after 62 minutes. And Pardew was the Palace manager as well.
Why do any of us still like this club, by the way? What are we all doing?
What a way back down to earth from beating Newcastle, though. You know what I mean?
What a great team talk. Keep it tight after half time, lads. 17 minutes later, 4 goals have gone in. But Andrew, I just wanted to quickly raise just a bit of self-indulgence on my part. But I remember 1991, I was in the full end when I thought Sunderland had cracked it with 2 young lads up front. We beat Steve Coppell's Crystal Palace 2-1. Kieran Brady and David Rush scored, and they were absolutely brilliant. They tore Palace apart that day. Brian Atkinson was in midfield. He was only 19, 20. Rush, Brady were young. Gary Howers was in there. Richard Ord, Anthony Smith was in that team. I thought, God, we've got this young team. We're beating, sides like Crystal Palace who were on their way to the FA Cup final and all that. And I thought, we've cracked it here.
Well, you're right. Palace were a handy team back then. And yeah, there's not a lot of experience amongst those players. I remember at the time being worried because it must have been presumably Gabbiadini and Davenport who were out injured.
Well, Davenport's on the bench.
Oh, was he? Oh,
yeah.
Well. So those 2 must have been picked not just out of necessity. Dennis Smith must have fancied going with David Rush. And I do remember that game being a bit of a hang on, we might be onto something here. The young lads have got the the skills to bring us through, and didn't quite work out like that. But yeah, just me, Chris. Any mention of some of those names is just going to get me feeling warm inside again.
Exactly, but how wrong were we? Anyway, just quickly, who scored Palace's goal that day when we beat them 2-1 at Roker Park?
Oh, must be somebody with a Sunderland link, I'm guessing.
Well, we already mentioned him.
Pardew.
It was Alan Pardew. He scored a header that day for Crystal Palace. But anyway, look, before we get on to the modern day and before we get into this game, we'll take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon.
Here at Blue Apron, we know exactly how hectic school nights can be. That's why we created Assemble and Bake. Delicious one-pan meals that make family dinner simple. Just assemble the pre-chopped ingredients and put the pan in the oven to bake. Then you're free to help out with that last-minute diorama. Shop Assemble and Bake at BlueApron.com. Get 50% off your first 2 orders with code APRON50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit BlueApron.com/terms for more.
And welcome back to How We're the Podcast. And we're getting into Sunderland against Crystal Palace at the Stadium of Light. And let's start with Palace before we get into the lads. Gav, 13 seasons in the Premier League for Crystal Palace. We're finishing between 10th and 15th. And I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit with Sunderland. But, I'm going to ask the question, is that what we're aspiring to be in terms of having that sort of stability, especially when you throw in an FA Cup win as well?
Yeah, to a degree, I think, I think we'd be a little bit disappointed if we didn't really kick on as a club. Like, I think stability's nice, but for 10 years, it's not nice. And I listened to the guy you spoke to, Chris, and he basically said that, he said it's great, but, sometimes the owner there, Parish, he needs to be prodded a little bit to get a little bit more out of him and to put him under a little bit of pressure, and that seems to be what Oliver Glasner's doing at the minute in terms of demanding more of him. And it might even reach the point where Glasner leaves because he doesn't get what he wants, because the club's ambition doesn't really match his. But if you look at Palace as a club and the fact that over their history, that was the first trophy they've ever won last year. So they're not historically a successful club. That probably does represent success for them. But Sunderland are 6-time league champions, 2-time FA Cup winners. We've been outside of the elite for a long time, but this is a club of massive potential, more fans than Palace could ever dream of, an unbelievable stadium, a club that's going places. So whilst, I would love to be in the position where we have sustained success in the Premier League and we get a trophy, I think we wouldn't really be as accepting of just finishing mid-table all the time. I think, especially the way the club's grown in the last 5 years under Kyril, we're going to want to see constant progression. And that doesn't mean you're always going to finish higher every year, because that's difficult. But I would more like to look at a club like Aston Villa, who were in the Championship the same time as us when Chris Coleman and Simon Grace were in charge of Sunderland. They were in the Championship that year. Look at Villa. People are talking about them as potential Premier League winners, as a team who can challenge the elite. Like, I think long term, that should be our ambition. Constant qualification in European positions and challenging at the top of the game, because why not? I just think we're probably, people listening might think you're being ridiculous, but I think if you ask Kyril Louis-Dreyfus without any microphone switched on, where you couldn't hold him to it, his ambition is to maybe look more like and I dare I say it, Newcastle, a club like that who are challenging the elite clubs and poking their way in and just showing that there's more than just 6 teams in England who can compete.
Yeah. I mean, Johnny, just looking at it on paper, between 10th and 15th for 13 years, I mean, it does sound slightly boring. And he did, and Luke, the preview did hint that some fans are maybe getting a little bit bored of it. But it is great. It is, you could put that down as a success, like having that sustained period of finishing in those places. But how does that sound to you? And, in terms of taking that next step, like Gav's talking about, you look at the likes of Aston Villa, and they've taken some big risks to try and get into that top group, haven't they?
Yeah, Villa's an interesting one, I think. Like, I totally agree with Gav's point that you do sort of suffer from success a bit if you're in sort of Palace's position or a team like them who, okay, Palace have won a trophy, so let's all be honest, we'd all rip your hands off for an FA Cup in the next 5 or 10 years, even if we got relegated afterward. But I think he's right. You look at the potential that we've got as a football club, and it is on a different level to some other teams. And I don't think that's arrogance. I just think it's recognition of some of the inbuilt advantages that a club like Sunderland have got, where, a team like Crystal Palace, who are one of many in London, all competing in the same kind of catchment area and all that sort of thing. There's big differences. So as much as Palace's current situation sounds very nice to us in the sense that, we've just got back in the Premier League, if you said there was, imagine you can ignore everything else is totally blind, but I'll guarantee you in 10 years' time, you're still in the Premier League. I think most of us are probably going to say, well, we must be doing well then. Something must be going right. But yeah, it's a strange one because you think about the relative trajectory of the two clubs, and Palace are actually on the slide at the minute. Gav mentioned the potential likelihood of Glasner leaving at the end of the season, which I feel like I've seen several reports saying that it's all but confirmed that he's going to be gone come season's end. So, and you look at their form as well, and I'm sure we'll get on to that. I mean, you already mentioned, I think, no wins in 6. You look at their form guide, it's just LD, 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 LD. So hopefully they don't break that particular streak this afternoon. But, we're on the up and they're on the slide. So as much as they've got a lot of things going for them that we can rightly be a little bit almost jealous of at the minute, particularly that trophy, I think if you offered a lot of Crystal Palace fans the opportunity to swap places with Sunderland right now, I think a fair few of them would take it, which speaks a lot to how well run we are, obviously, but also I think it's almost like a little bit of a cautionary tale of the malaise that can set in when you've spent so long in the Premier League, and objectively you're succeeding compared to all but 10 other clubs in the entire country, but it doesn't mean that can't cause problems. So it's just that little bit of a glimpse into a potential future that I think, the powers that be at the club would do well to hopefully try and learn a few lessons from and try and avoid making some of the same mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, we've mentioned their form a couple of times already, Andrew. I don't think they've won in 9 in total and 6 in the Premier League. And they're on the back of that loss at Macclesfield, of course, in the FA Cup. But is it just quite lazy to say it's a good time to play them?
Yeah, I actually don't know if it is a good time to play them or not, because your talk with Luke, the Crystal Palace fan, if people haven't heard that, it's worth listening to. Because, yeah, I just looked at results and thought, Palace are on the slide, happy days. But there's a few things that's made us potentially revise that. I think the fact that Palace, like Sunderland, have had a 7-day break could be massive. Because your guest was saying, wasn't he, that since November they've had at least 2 games a week. Mm-hmm. And we know ourselves that takes it out of you. And also, that cup upset they suffered, they're bound to want to react to that. They're not just going to take it lying down. There'll be players there who have spent all week just itching to get back out on a football field and kind of prove the doubters wrong. So, yeah, whilst it looks good in terms of Premier League defeats and what have you, they are going to be feeling, you would imagine, pretty wound up and ready to go. Also, as well, and another thing I hadn't really appreciated, I don't think they're that bad away from home, are they? So we've got to be careful. We've got to be careful at thinking this is a gimme. I don't think it's going to be quite as easy as we'd like to think.
Andrew mentioned it there, Gav, and it was interesting to hear Luke on the Opposition podcast tell us that the whole Selhurst Park being a fortress thing was a bit of a myth, because only 5 teams have taken fewer points at home this season than Crystal Palace. But that does mean, especially for this weekend, only 4 sides have taken more points on the road. And, they've won 5, lost 4. And the fact they've only drawn 1, Gav, away from home suggests that they do go for it.
Yeah. The other thing he said, which certainly made my ears prick up, was that he basically said if a team sits in against them, they haven't got a maverick player who can cut that team apart. and that's where they've struggled this season. Every time somebody has told us that this season, when you've then watched the game, it's played out. We've heard that quite a bit this season from these teams who do like to play on the front foot. Basically, if you don't match them up from a footballing sense, they're not particularly great at breaking you down. Regis Labrise will know that. So their form doesn't bother me whatsoever. I'm not bothered about how Palace have done away from home. We've not lost at home. So I'm more concerned about that, and I'm sure they are as well. I think they'll be looking at that and probably be looking at their recent results and going, shit, we need to win a game soon. Where we can go into this one knowing that it's basically a case of teams come to us and it's like, what you got? It's not been a great week for Palace either. Obviously, there's been constant speculation about the manager. It looks like Marc Guehi signing for Man City, so that may well impact his involvement in this game. I don't know. I know when Semenyo signed for City, he was allowed to play that final game for them, wasn't he? And maybe that's the case again with this, but I just think when there's so much money on the table, do Palace really want to risk him getting injured and losing out on money when he's out of contract in the summer? I would suggest he might not play in this game. So there's that. He's their best player. He might not play in this game.
And also, Man City have had some pretty bad injuries at centre-back as well, so they're likely to want him like as low risk as possible and just straight in as soon as he turns up.
Well, they beat the Mags with 2 kids at centre-half the other day, didn't they? So I just want to get that in there. So Marc Guehi potentially on his way. Manager not very happy, not really spending money in the right places. He mentioned Daniel Munoz has been missing, who's one of the most important players. So, I think it's more about us, this one, Chris. I'm not worried about them, really. And that's been the case pretty much every home game this season. I think we've got to go into this recognising how good we are, let them come. They're the ones under pressure to get a result. And you might think, looking at our results, we could do a winning one too, which is true. But still, I'm not worried about that at all.
Yeah. I mean, just going through all that, Jonny, Marc Guehi looks like he's going to Man City. Mateta's being linked with Juventus. The rumours about the manager going. On paper, it just doesn't seem like a happy camp at the minute, does it?
Well, this is kind of what I was trying to get at before when I was saying that, like, relatively, I think we're on the up and they're kind of on the slide. And, I'm sure Palace fans wouldn't thank us for saying that. Nobody likes hearing the club be criticised. But as you've just said, there are a few factors that feel like they're going to come to a head pretty soon as well. Like, there's obviously I think Glasner's out of contract at the end of the season as well, I want to say. So one way or the other, whether that results in a renewal or him leaving, that's a matter of months away from being done. Obviously, Guehi's likely to be a matter of days or hours, depending how quickly things move with that one. So yeah, it feels like we're sort of in almost the calm before the storm for Palace, where obviously there's no guarantee that this is going to result in them getting worse, because they could reinvest the money really, really well, and they might progress. But it does feel like that period. I think whereas a fan base, often you'll just know, won't you? Sort of before things happen, you're like, oh, I can just feel that things are about to change. And it's that, I think it's like an extra sense of stress, almost an anxiety for a fan base, where you can just feel that things aren't quite clicking, going in the right direction. So it's not going to be anything like, for example, West Ham, we've got the game after, or it's either 1 or 2 games after, isn't it? Yeah. That's going to be open rebellion. They're not even going to be in their seats for 15 minutes. Palace is nowhere near that kind of situation. They're in that sort of the pre-stage of that, I think, where things are just, the slides maybe just beginning. Things are starting to turn just a little bit edgy, nothing too overtly negative. So I'm not expecting the Palace fans who rock up to be, chanting sack the board or whatever. But you do just get the feeling that it's not the happiest of camps, like you say, and hopefully that's an avenue that we can exploit, because if there is that uncertainty behind the scenes and we can make inroads early doors against them, then hopefully we can get on top and then snowball that momentum. But, we'll see when the first whistle goes, won't we?
Yeah, just again on Guehi, by the way, the news for that seems to have come out really quickly. I mean, Romano's all over it. He's tweeted again this afternoon saying that Man City are hopeful of sealing the deal very soon. They've already presented that proposal to Palace. The agreement between the clubs isn't seen as an issue. So they're saying it's advancing fast on the players' side. So, I mean, I would be shocked if he's in that team tomorrow or today. Sorry, I've done an ant. I've misquoted what day we're on. Yeah. So, like, I think that's got to be seen as a big. While I say it's about us, can you imagine taking the best player out of any team? What that's going to do for morale, preparations? They're already missing defenders. Like we've actually got to smell blood. We've got to be like a pack of hyenas and go right. Like they're vulnerable at the minute. By the way, we haven't mentioned that a team in the National League North put them out the FA Cup last weekend, which again, morale-wise, what has that done to them this week? You've got to think it has to have damaged the way that they've prepared coming into this game. I know on the preview pod you did, Chris, the guy says they'll be hoping for a reaction. Well, I'm sure they are hoping for one. But can you imagine if Sunderland got put out the FA Cup by a team in the National League North? We would be furious.
There were first team starters in that game as well. It's like obviously they didn't he? Yeah, exactly. And like that Pino played in the front three, who I think he started against us at Selhurst. So it wasn't a second string team.
Yeah. So we've got to take advantage of that big style. I think even if he does play, what headspace would Marc Guehi be? And I know when he was linked with Liverpool in the summer, he was the consummate professional, wasn't he? He just got on with his job. He didn't kick up a fuss because it fell through right on deadline day, if you remember. And he was back in the team and he was being asked about it by the press, and he was just like, "Here's what it is. I'm just going to get on with it, happy to be here." Seems like a really level-headed guy, but this feels different to me because basically, if he just let's theoretically say he gets injured and doesn't get that big move, he would be out of contract in the summer and Palace would miss out on a lot of money. And I just don't think they can take that risk. I mean, put yourself in their shoes, what would we do? If we've got this player who's worth 40, 50 million quid, would you risk playing him against Sunderland, one of the most physical teams in the Premier League? I wouldn't.
Well, just on that topic, Andrew, of last comment about Crystal Palace, because obviously they've recently signed Brennan Johnson for 35 million from Spurs. And I have to be honest, I'm not sure how I'd feel if it was Sunderland making that signing. I think I might be slightly worried about how we're spending our money if we'd gone and spent that much on Johnson. I don't know. How do you look at that signing?
It's a funny one because I seem to think last year he had a bit of a hot streak for Tottenham and scored a few goals, but since then he hasn't. He's had a very poor season from what I could gather. So yeah, there's a few question marks over him. I don't want to say too much because you can see a Yannick Bolasie style hat trick in 17 minutes if we go too far on him. But there were suggestions Sunderland had looked at him, and I wasn't particularly upset when that failed to materialise. It wasn't a player I would have necessarily wanted us to push too hard for. And it's all very well and good signing a player with a bit of a name and for however, did you say 35 million? I think it's all very well and good, but if some of your bigger players in that team are going in the opposite direction, it doesn't improve you enough. We're talking about Guehi heading off. That's a massive gap to fill. So signing an expensive winger doesn't really compensate for that.
Well, this preview pod could well turn into a transfer window update pod because the news is coming through thick and fast as we're recording. Anyway, sticking with the game, and I'll stick with you, Andrew, on this one because actually moving on to the lads, it was in the press conference. Andy Sixsmith asked the question when he asked the manager, he was asking whether it's a concern that performances have been good, but we've won only 1 in 9. And Regis said that it showed, how relentless the Premier League is, and that we are being consistent, but it's the fine margins between getting a draw and a defeat, and doesn't tell the full story. He did add about the important thing was adding new layers to our game and small details, which makes the difference. But is it a weird place to be in that we're playing well for the most part, but not coming out with more wins?
I don't think so. I agree that there's extra layers and there's ways for the team to improve. I just think it's a straightforward fact of we've been going through a really tough run of fixtures that were condensed, and they were at a time when we had 4 or 5 important bodies unavailable. I really do think it was a simple case of that. And you're now looking ahead to the next few weeks. As Johnny's mentioned, we're playing West Ham. I think we've got Burnley coming to the stadium of late. I think that now we've got a pretty strong starting 11 and a pretty strong bench. I think we will turn those draws into 1 or 2 wins. I'm pretty relaxed at the moment. There was nothing in those games that gave me too much to be worried about.
Yeah, well, Gav, and this was praised at the press conference as well, the BBC report about XG, which anyone who loves their data will have loved reading through, and anyone like Martin O'Neill, who's a dinosaur, probably like myself, will just dismissed it because it was raised, and that report, Gav, repeatedly said that we were outperforming the data, and Register I thought was quite funny because he replied in just saying, we have our own data, which I thought was a good response. But it is odd, Gav, that people are getting hung up on these things rather than just looking at a simple fact that only the top 3 have lost fewer games in the first 21 games of the season.
Yeah, well, I think, look, with me with data, like I've kind of, I get why people love it, and I get why people use it to back up arguments, and I get why it's there. But like Sunderland, the eye test is very different to what the data probably tells you in a lot of regards with us. We don't create millions of chances, but we're horrible to play against. So like people get hung up on this thing where like, well, we're not scoring enough goals, but I can't remember who it was who said it. It might have been someone on our pod or on the radio this week. Can't remember, but it was along the lines of like, it's a lot easier to win 1-0 than it is to win 5-4 or 4-3. So a lot of teams go for it and they maybe don't get the end result they wanted. But then you come away and you go, well, we scored 4 goals and we were really good attacking. But you still get 3 points for winning 1-0. And I think we've actually perfected the art of just grinding out results. And it's not through the want to try. And I genuinely think that the team do want to create more and score more goals. And I think we've got the ability to. But I think it's something Martin said quite a lot on the pod, is like the current phase we're in is to just get through games, win games, establish a solid base, make us difficult to play at the Stadium of Light, and all these things. Maybe in a year or two's time that'll advance slightly and we'll play a more expansive style. But at the minute, I'm fine with how we play, and actually, I get quite excited by the really defensive football and the winning second balls and getting stuck in. That's my bread and butter. That I remember seeing this when we were playing really shit football under like Michael Beale and Dodds in the end of that season in the Championship, where I think I listened to Sam Allardyce on his podcast, and he was saying like he was talking about how the games just become stale and boring, and to him, exciting football is players getting stuck in and chucking their elbow in and headers and like Route 1 goals where someone knocks it down and someone smashes it in. I actually think that's the style of football we play. And it doesn't look good on the data metrics, I'm sure, but like you can't complain, can you, when you turn up to the games and see how we play?
That's it. Well, Johnny, just on that, we're talking about XG and attacking, but how much does it matter when you look at the fact that only 2 sides have conceded fewer goals in total, and only one team, and that's Arsenal, have conceded fewer goals at all?
Well, that tells you the whole story, I think, doesn't it? Gav's spot on. I think sometimes we're in danger of missing the wood for the trees, right? Like, as a fan base and as a football media landscape, everyone's guilty of the same thing, just manifests in different ways. It's like Andrew said before when you were discussing like our run of form and, isn't it weird that we're all feeling positive, but we haven't won many games? And I thought Andrew was spot on. It's like, yeah, but you just can't get away from the fact that we had no players. Like, it's the boring answer, and I totally understand why everyone does it, right? Because when every time you have the conversation, and it's Sunderland. Well, 6 players have gone to AFCON. Oh, well, what about this? Well, yeah, 6 players have gone, right? So that rules everything. And so you look for other things to talk about, and there's value in those things. But at the end of the day, the main reason you can't escape. And it's the same when I just was listening to Gav there, talking about the style of football and the priorities and the phase we're in. Yeah, we'd all love to be scoring 4 and 5 goals a game. But we're a newly promoted club. Like, I know we're not a newly promoted team, but we are a newly promoted club. We're not going to rock up season 1, first time of asking, and get everything right across the board, back to front, all the way up the pitch. You know, we're not going to be turning up and getting 70-odd points, 80-odd points, challenging for a league, having one of the best defensive records and scoring 70 goals. It's just never, ever, ever going to happen unless they take all the financial rules away and Kirill bangs his head really hard one summer and just goes, oh, I'll spend £2 billion in a single window. It's not feasible and it's not realistic. So, yeah, like, it's absolutely true to say that we can do better going forward. But like you've just, to bring it back to what you actually asked me, it's true to say that the defence is fantastic. And part of the reason the defence is so good is essentially because the attacks are not, if you know what I mean. Like, the defence is so good because that's where the focus has been. That's where the emphasis is in the style of play, where we spent, I would say, the most money on, or not the most money, but the most money we spent on immediately ready players was in the defensive half of the pitch. Roofs and the back four. You know, I mean, if you discount the fact that Ballard's been brilliant, we essentially bought an entire new back five in Roofs, Ronaldo, Alderete, Mukiele. You know, there's Masuaku. I mean, I know Masuaku's not, but the point, I think you can tell what I'm getting at, right? So all of that combines to the fact that we are a primarily defensive outfit, but that doesn't mean that we don't play good football, and it doesn't mean that we can't transition into being a team that gets forward a bit more and plays a little bit more fluidly. It's just something that needs to come with time. And again, like, people forget, we have 14 players who signed this summer. Is it a surprise they're not as fluent as they could be? I would suggest not. So I'm not worried about it whatsoever.
Go on, sorry. Just while Johnny's been talking, Gav, go on, update us.
Honestly, I wish these podcasts were live, like, because every time something frigging happens, it seems to be while we're recording. So we might have alluded to that Oliver Glasner could potentially be leaving Palace, but he has confirmed that he is indeed leaving Palace in the summer. He will not be signing a new deal. So, I mean, we did talk about it though, Chris. You know, it's probably the worst kept secret at that club. He's going to leave. It's been confirmed he is going to leave, but it just adds this thing. I was talking about Marc Guehi before, you know. He's leaving, Glasner leaving. It just adds this sense of bad feeling after such a terrible result in the cup that they're coming into this game with. And wouldn't it be the most Sunderland thing ever if, and I'm not going to say it, but, you know, if this had been us, we'd lose 6-0. But let's see how Palace fare.
Yeah. Not this new Sunderland, Gav. Not this new Sunderland. And I was just going to bookmark that last conversation by saying when only 3 sides have lost fewer games after 21 games in the Premier League, you can stick XG up your arse, to be honest. But go on, Andrew.
I was just going to say, if you wanted, you could actually say the XG business is a positive, because to me, it looks like we're clinical, because we only need a couple of chances and we're scoring. I'd much rather that than be a team who's creating 4 or 5 chances a game, like Palace apparently, and wasting them. That's more of an issue. So I know I've cut you off halfway through saying stick XG up your backside, but if we do have to use it, it doesn't have to even be as negative. Sorry, I'm just going to quit while I'm ahead because there's more messages coming through in the chat.
Go on, Gav. You heard the beeps there, the breaking news.
Am I like Jim White here? Yeah, Marc Guehi actually will not be in the squad either, so that's been confirmed also.
So while you're on, Gav, go on. How does that impact things? Because Glasner's announced he's going. Guehi's not in the squad. I mean, Palace have got to be travelling north thinking, bloody hell, everything's against us.
Well, yeah, they're not going to have their minds completely focused on what's going on the pitch, are they? That's the top and bottom of it. You know the manager's leaving. You know your captain and best player is leaving. You're probably looking around and going, what the fuck are we going to do at Sunderland? Unbeaten at home. We've got to go into there. Like, I would be worried if I was a Palace fan. Their season from this point could really capitulate because it's tight, that league. You know, I mean, they're not. Look, they're not in any grave danger of, you know, dropping out the Premier League or anything. I don't think they're on 28 points after 21 games. So, you know, it would take a really rotten run of form for them to get dragged into the relegation mix, given the 14 points ahead of West Ham, who are on 14 points. So West Ham would have to then kick into sort of top half of the table form. But it probably just means their season's going to peter out, doesn't it, from this point? It's amazing, really. We've been recording over an hour, Chris. We've barely actually talked about what Sunderland are going to do in this game because there's just so much shit going on at Palace. Managers leaving, best players leaving, just been beaten by Macclesfield. It's like honestly, and like I really am a glass half full Sunderland fan. But even I hear all of this and I'm just like, oh God, why are we playing them next? Like, we should be relishing playing this team. Nah, in all seriousness, I think is there a better time to play Palace? Genuinely. Just being beaten by Macclesfield, managers leaving, best players leaving. You know, they're going to be on the floor.
Well, the people who want to be worried the most, I think it's, is it Just Eat? Who, Alan Pardew and all them Pulis and all them are doing the adverts for? Because I'm sure one of them will be taking a phone call maybe from from Palace maybe in the near future. I think it's Just Eat, can't remember, but they're on some advert together anyway. But anyway, let's get into what Sunderland are going to do. And we can't start anywhere better than you, Jonny, because you got it so wrong last week. So let's get into how Sunderland are going to line up at the back. Loads coming back, because we've got Ronaldo, Alderete and Ballard, who could potentially come straight back in. Do you think all of those come back in for, you know, a back four of, let's say, Michaela on the right, Alderete, Ballard and Ronaldo on the left?
That's as close to a first choice back four as I think we've got. You know, in as much as a first choice, anything can exist in the era of rotation and fixture congestion. But, you know, on paper, I mean, obviously Roofs is coming back in. I know we were very confident about the keeper last time, but this time, trust us, Roofs will be playing.
Are you sure?
Now you'll put another message in the chat. Oh, Roofs has broken his finger. He's out the game.
Gets injured in the warm-up.
Yeah. So it'll be Roofs. I think the only question really is going to be, do we go 4 or do we try and match Palace up and go with a 3/5 at the back? Because I think, you know, that's their sort of preferred formation is to have that 3, and then they've got Munoz as the right wing back on one side and whoever else it is on the other side. I can't pretend that I'm not up to date on Palace's latest selections, but that's the question for us: is do we match them or do we go 4? Personally, I'd like to see us go 4 because I think now that we've got Siddiqui back, I like the idea of us getting back to that 3-man midfield that we were seeing, you know, perform with really good amounts of success earlier on in the season. So I know I'm throwing that forward a bit, but yeah, for me, I'd be picking the back 4 that you just read out. The only question mark within a 4 is, does Hume get a start? You know, I'd be happy either way. If Hume's playing, you know what you're going to get. He's going to be, you know, I don't think he's been below a 6 out of 10 basically all season, usually 7 or 8 out of 10. So he's reliable and he's dependable. But yeah, like I say, for me, I'd be looking to see Michaela at right back, Ronaldo at left back. But, you know, we'll see.
Yeah. Andrew, you were nodding your head throughout all of that. Where does that leave Trey Hume then, if that sees back 4?
Well, I'd actually put him in the midfield 3. I'm really liking Hume at the moment. Every time there's a suggestion that he may drop out of the side, he kind of just he proves everybody wrong. There was times earlier on in the season where I did think he would be coming out at the starting 11, and it just hasn't happened. And I quite like what he's been doing recently when he's been in this bizarre all over the right hand side of the pitch mode. So yeah, go on, stick him in a midfield 3, see what he can do, and he'll probably end up defending when he needs to. He'll probably end up out wide when he needs to, and then he'll probably end up popping up in the box when he needs to. And who knows, you know, he might get a header or something. So, you never know with Hume.
So just quickly, who misses out then? Because the questions were raised about Mundle doing enough against Everton, Andrew. So would he miss out and Hume would come in and Lefebvre move out to that left-hand side?
That's exactly it, yeah. Mundell worked really hard against Everton. He did a lot of good things, but there wasn't. I know he had a lot of shots, but they were fairly routine for Pickford to save. I don't think he had much in terms of end product. So yeah, that's exactly what I'd do. I'd be having Lefay kind of playing further out wide and Hume being alongside Xhaka and Siddiqui.
Yeah, and then we need to go to Jim White now to get his opinions on the lineup. So we've got that back four.
Do you know what it is, Chris? Yeah, well, I don't know. I just don't know. Hard, isn't it? Like to say who could
you were telling us you got it nailed on.
Do you want us to have a guess and see if I get it right then? Right. Well, obviously, Roof's in goal. I'm going with Nordy right back, with Ballard and Alderete centre half, Ronaldo left back, and then into midfield it'll be Xhaka, Siddiqui, and Lefay, I think. And then on the wings we're looking at Dingra, Mayenda, and then Brobbey up front. Would be my guess. It's tough, innit? Because Sirkin and Hume have done nothing wrong at all. They've played well, but we've talked about this a bit, Chris. I think if all the options are presented to the manager, his strongest back four is Nordy right back, Ronaldo left back, Ballard and Alderete as the two centre halves, and you've also got to consider what a job Ballard did on Mateta down at their place earlier in the season. I just think the setup and everything was perfect in that game, where I think we might have even played a back five, but Ballard was basically tasked with him. And then playing a back five as well, sort of a three with two wing backs, makes us think a four would be probably the better option rather than matching them up. So, yeah, I feel a little bit sorry for the lads who have to drop out, but yeah, look, Ronaldo was given an extended break. He might not be fully fit. I don't know. But the club have made a bit of a song and dance out of him on socials this week, coming back into training. Of course, wearing his vest because he's hard as out. So yeah, I'm erring more towards that, but I guess we'll see. You know, it's a good option to have off the bench, Trey Hume. I can't remember what game it was now when he got benched, but then he came on the right wing later in the game, and it just helped us shore things up a bit. And I can see him maybe having that kind of role in this one.
Yeah, I do remember what that one.
It was a home game. I can't remember who it was. No, I don't know, mate. But yeah,
I can't remember. But yeah, no, he is a good option off the bench. Even to put a couple of crosses in later on and a couple of set pieces and all that sort of stuff. But let's go on to quick predictions, gents, and we'll start with you, Andrew. Because look, everything we've talked about how crap things are at Palace. So let's get into predictions.
Isn't it nice though? I know I've said this a few times on the pod, but isn't it nice that it's Palace who are going into the game in a mess? When was the last time Sunderland had any of this chew going on? It used to always be our manager leaving on a Friday afternoon, or our star player saying he wants to leave. So we're in a good place, and we can capitalise on teams being feeling slightly more negative. I think there was a nasty feeling that we were going to draw that I had in the back of my mind. But as Jim White here keeps giving us updates about Palace, I mean, probably in 10 minutes' time, there'll be another update saying they've been booted out of Selhurst Park or something, you know, just everything seems to be going wrong for them this afternoon. So I fancy us. I think it'll be 2-0, and I think it's really interesting to hear that Palace struggle with set pieces. I think we'll bombard them with corners and throw-ins and really try and pin them in, particularly now that Guehi's not involved. So yeah, that's what I reckon will happen.
There you go. Andrew thinks we're going to score 2 goals since for the first time since 29th of November when we beat Bournemouth. But let's have yours, Jonny.
Well, my prediction is that either Gav's hot streak of team predictions means I'm going to be saved from last week because I would have picked the exact 11 he said, or Gav's run as our, Nostradamus of team selections is about to come to a screeching halt. Because if I would have predicted it, it means there's a near chance that's going to be the team. But in terms of the actual game and the result, I agree with Andrew, actually. I think originally I looked at this fixture and thought, well, I know that we've got some players back and we're not quite in the thick of the AFCON run anymore, but I did think, like, is this going to be like one of those where on paper you think, oh, great chance to get back to winning ways, but then it's their sort of chance to break out of their poor form and you maybe wonder about a draw. But with everything that, all the ridiculous levels of breaking news that we've seen over the past half an hour, I feel much more confident. So I also think I'm going to go with a win. Scoreline wise, I must have amnesia short term because I've totally forgot what Andrew said. I think 2-0. So I'm sorry if that's what you said as well. Yep. I've nicked your prediction and all, but yeah, I think this could be the first comfortable, routine home win that we have in a while, and I hope so.
Yeah, probably since, well, I don't even want to say Bournemouth or Wolves. Maybe the visitors, really. That was quite routine. But Gav, let's get yours, mate.
I'm going 2-0 Sunderland. Broby to get another goal in the first half, and then Isidore off the bench to get the second. And I agree with Andrew. I think the fact they've been poor from set pieces, the lack of Marc Guehi might cause problems at the back for them on set pieces, and maybe one or two of the goals will come from that. So yeah 2-0.
Yep, Luke did say they were susceptible on set pieces, so that should be one to look out for. But we've got a full house for 2-0 for the lads against Palace. So I think that's as good a place as any to end on before we get any more updates from Jim White. We better leave it first. Just leave you to say thank you very much, Jonny.
Thank you very much, Chris. Always a pleasure.
Good stuff. And thanks again, Andrew.
Lovely, thank you. I now know what it's like to work on Sky Sports News with all these updates coming in.
And just before we go, Gav, you'll be doing a quick podcast straight after the game?
Yes, Johnny's bottled it, so he's not coming, but I think I'll be on with Sam and whichever other waifs and strays wander into the Hilton Hotel for a chat after the game. Yes, we'll be back after the game with another pod.
Yeah, well, you should be more professional if you ask me. And if you're not taking a serious analyst, you shouldn't be pissed while you... Yeah. Not that anybody does take the serious analyst. But apparently one or two people might. But anyway, thank you very much, Gav.
No problem, mate.
And enjoy your weekend, gents. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. Don't forget, if we're not enough for your pre-match rituals, we've got loads more build-up on the Roker Report website. And then you can listen to the lads slur over their pints after the game. That's it from us. It's bye for now.